the issue of leadership you talked about, because it's very critical now that we understand how important it is for us to have a good driver. Now, you've been in Parliament as a young Nigerian then, and
in my 20s.
You can imagine. That was
in
a
my
fantastic
20s. I came
moment
back
for you.
from England at the age of 24.
Okay. So now these are leaders as well, because it is almost like the grand norm that can make a nation succeed. How did it go? What's the difference between that time when you were there as a lawmaker and what we have today?
Well, let me be honest with you. The British structure of Nigeria was not right. Because at the time of independence, they were determined that power must be handed to the North. And that was exactly what happened. And I'm saying this with the greatest respect to everybody. I was in Parliament before independence, in Parliament at time of independence, in Parliament post-independence. And when Balewa was going to New York for admission to the UN, I accompanied him. So if you look at the balance at that time, you will find that it was not really, the structure was not right. At that time, whether you like it or not, the greatest Nigerian who fought us for independence was Zik. Zik was brilliant, it was great, and he has the biggest newspaper in this country at that time, if you take all the papers. And of course, you have Okpara as number 2. Then you have Chief Awolowo, who was a very great statesman, and you have Chief Esther Lakitola as number 2. And of course, you have Sadana Osokoto, Premier of the North, very brilliant, and you have Balewa as the Prime Minister. So you have a balance where you have 2 from the North, 2 from the East, 2 from the West. But it did last long. It did not. Because
why?
We had a civil war. The civil war came, I was in Parliament, and in the morning, I was a Federal Minister of Education. I woke up in the morning to hear that there had been a coup and the military has taken over. I don't want to go into that, but that is one of the critical eras in the history of this Nigeria. But the military ruled us now for many years, until Gawan was overthrown, Muitala took over, it lasted 6 months, it was overthrown, and then of course, another regime came in. So if you look at the balance of this country, you might say that we have not done very well. I accept that. But is it our fault?
Then whose fault?
The British. The British.
We take the blame back to the British?
Yes.
Even all of this?
They did. Look, I must say
it's
it was
53
the British.
now.
It was, I agree. But I also concede that after the British gave us independence, we did not do as much as we have done. The leadership was not united. The leadership was divided. The Igbos who cooperate with the North. The Yorubas who cooperate with the Igbos. And the Jaws say things they are different. Even in the North now, you have dichotomy.
Let's talk more on the British, the fort you placed on the doorsteps of the British, of Britain then.
Well, don't forget, Britain came to Nigeria not because they like us, but for the economic interest. It is, number 1 is the economic interest. Number 2 is the economic interest. And number 3 is the economic interest. You see, many people used to think that when the Spanish, the Portuguese, the British, the French came to Africa, they like Africa. It's rubbish. They do not. Their critical interest is the economic interest. It's not for us. Okay, how do you explain the growth of Australia and New Zealand? Sierra Leone was created and founded before New Zealand and Australia. But look at those countries today. They're as good as Europe. But look at Sierra Leone. It's worse than the worst country in the world. Why? Because it's governance, and the quality of governance and the quality of leadership.
As a matter of fact, I mean, the younger generation will always lament, and they always say, look, they've had it so bad, to the extent that they blame leadership. And this leadership, they say, had it very good in their time. But these days, the leadership is increasingly selfish to the extent that they don't seem to cater for their needs. And as such, the rate of unemployment is really high, poverty, and all this stare the young people in the face, and they're increasingly frustrated.
A lot of things you have said are true, and some of them are not true.
Like which ones?
But don't forget that unemployment bad, economic bad, but were they not inherited by the present government. If I say this studio is not good, this station is not good, are you the cause of all the evil that has happened? A lot of things you inherited. But you can make it, because you can correct them and make it the right balance, it will take some time. Even though some things are bad now, are they made bad by the people in government today or by the people in government before?
Leadership consistently.
It consistently. But when you inherit something, it takes some time to make a balance. I must concede that a number of things are very good now and some things are bad. But want to maintain a balance that a lot of them were inherited, are not created by the present government.
Yes, but the thing is, not even this government, maybe previous governments, including this government, most times when they come onto the stage, the reason why they're elected in the first place is to sort the challenges Nigerians have got out. But when they fail, they never admit that they fail.
But will you admit that we didn't have the right marriage? The critical problem of this country was the marriage, and I knew that when I entered Parliament. You find there's hardly anything common between the various people who went to the marriage. If you don't have the common, if you marry a bad wife, how can it succeed? Or if the wife married a bad man as husband, how can it succeed? That is a critical thing in Nigeria. And in fact, when I entered Parliament, we had a nominated Senate. And whenever I had matter, in fact, when I was Minister of Education, and if you look at the thing of the accountant, I created that, I piloted that bill through the House of Reps and the Senate. And although I was not a member of the Senate, I was sitting in the Senate. And I was sitting with white people as member of the Senate because they were nominated. So all these problems are bad. All these problems were, many of them are inflicted on us.
What about the ones that were inflicted on ourselves?
I agree. You are right. You see, there are certain things that should not happen that happen. For instance, why should you have a coup to overthrow an elected government? It doesn't make sense. But it happened. But that was not inflicted on by the British or by the Americans or the Canadians or the French. It was self-inflicted. Again, it happened because we are not one. A marriage which should never have been a marriage.
Okay, but having been in that situation, does that then mean that there's nothing we could do to correct and improve?
I accept that a lot of things we do. The critical thing in any situation is leadership. Leadership and leadership.
Did you just say we're not one?
If what?
Did you just say we're not one?
We were never one. Anybody who say we've been one before must be joking. I mean, tell me what is common between the Kanaris.
No, we've always been told one Nigeria.
Well, because we want to be one. Because we want to be one. It's a marriage of convenience.
Is it possible that we can be?
Of course we can be. Why not? Look at the United States. The United States now have Japanese, Chinese, Africans, British, French, Russians, and America. And America is doing very well. Are you not happy that America is lucky to have the present president with a Kenyan, an African father, and an American mother? Isn't that great? And in my view, I might be absurd. I think he's one of the greatest president America has ever produced. And I'm very, very proud of him. And I hope one day one of you will become Nigerian president and you become one of the greatest presidents Nigeria has ever produced.